Hello and welcome once again to Bipolarcast. This is a podcast where myself and Matt Bazuki speak to people with bipolar disorder using ketogenic metabolic therapy. We both have bipolar disorder ourselves and experience the benefits of this therapy. And so we do this podcast to raise awareness about this and to hear people's perspectives. So this is a lived experience perspective that I think can be valuable for scientists and clinicians and people with bipolar disorder that want to learn more about their condition. Today, we're really excited to have Robyn Dobbins on the podcast. And Robyn has been no sugar, no grains diet since 2017, a kind of carnivore diet, which eliminates carbohydrates. She's the co-host of the No Sugar, No Grains Lunch and Learn on Eat Happy Kitchen on Clubhouse. And she reversed her bipolar disorder and depression using no sugar and no grains, lost 50 pounds of weight. And in 4 years, she's not needed to take medications because of this change to her lifestyle. So you can find her on Twitter. I'll post a link in the description down here. And she credits many of the people that we've had on this show with this change in her life, people like Chris Palmer and people like Sean Baker and others who have promoted this way of eating. And Vinnie Tortridge is a podcast that she's very often a guest on. So thank you very much for joining us, Robyn.
Hi, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I guess we usually talk about the backstory of people with ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet and try to understand what their symptoms were like before. But with you, you've already made such massive progress in doing this. I'd love to hear about your journey whilst you've been on the diet. So if you're willing to start when you started the diet, what were the first times you noticed that a change in your diet was affecting your mental health?
Yeah, that's interesting. I wasn't sure where we were going to start, and I haven't started from back before. So I have jotted some notes down. We can touch on it if you'd like. But so I started eating, and you'll have to excuse me because I don't really use the term keto. I'm sure you guys are aware that that term's just kind of been picked up by the industry, and there's bars and shakes and all that stuff, and it's not really what I do. So I started what we call NSNG, which is no sugars, no grains, which is also it's trademarked by Vinnie Tortridge. He and this is because when I turned 40, I had gone to my doctor, and they did the blood work that you do when you go to the doctor, and he was all worried about my cholesterol, of course, because every doctor's worried about cholesterol. And he wanted to put me on a statin. So I had been aware of Vinnie, and I had been aware of I didn't really want to be on statins. I knew there was a long-term thing. Plus, I was already on medication for my bipolar and my depression, and I just didn't want to add something else. So I had asked my doctor, can I have 6 months to change my diet to see if that will make that change? So, all along, I'm thinking being bipolar, that's just who I am. That's just something I'm going to live with. This is not something I can really do anything about other than just talk about it and be on meds. So I changed my diet. 6 months later, went in for my blood work. The doctor was very pleased to see that the diet had worked in that. So I just kept going. So that was in 2017 when I started. And yeah, I lost weight, but that really was not what I was shooting for. In fact, I was maybe so medicated that I was blissfully unaware that I was overweight. So it was falling off of me, and I didn't even really, I was thankful for it, but it was really the side effect to I was trying to change my health around. I was always envisioning like little scrubbers in my arteries cleaning me out because I didn't want to have any heart issues as I aged. Meanwhile, my husband lost his job. He was laid off in early 2018. And of course, you can imagine that that's a really stressful time. We have 2 children, and he could not find work. We were living in South Carolina at the time. He could not find work. He's originally from Texas, and I kind of looked at him and I said, I guess this is it. You are going to have to move back to Texas, and we're going to have to go with you. So he started looking for jobs in Texas, and he got a job. So he was without work for about 3 months, and then he picked up and moved. And he was gone. And we were finishing out school, we were finishing out camps, we were finishing out just everything, me and the children, keeping the house together, showing the house, trying to sell the house, doing all the things, and he's halfway across the country. But somehow we made that work. By July, we had moved. We moved into Texas. And that's when I really started realizing, you know what? I'm handling things better. Okay. All that time, you figure a major life event like this, your husband loses, he's the sole breadwinner. He loses his job. We have to pick the children up out of everything they've ever known and move them across the country. I'm alone with the kids, packing and all this stuff, and we've made it. We're on the other side now. He's employed. We're in this apartment. We're learning new things, and I'm like, I could be, and maybe should be, curled up in a ball, just defeated and crying and not able to move on. Yet I almost feel like I'm thriving. I'm excited about this new change. I'm helping my kids through their struggles, because obviously it was really hard on them. I'm going outside. Now that we live in an apartment, I have to take my dog for a walk every day, and I'm taking that on, and I'm going outside. I'm getting that sunshine, and I just started realizing that maybe I'm feeling better. Maybe I don't need to be on these medications anymore. And so that's really the brunt of it. I did not know when I was going into changing the way I ate for my heart that I was going to end up changing the way I eat because of my brain. So I did find a doctor here and let them know what was going on, and asked if I could titrate off. It's a longer story than I could go into it, but I did work with a doctor to titrate off the medication that I was on, and I have not needed it since.
So this
That's an inspiring story. So just for the people to know, and just so I know, because I'm curious, you said no grains, no sugar. What does that exactly mean for you in terms of what you would eat on a regular basis and what you would avoid? Does it just mean no grains, no sugar, everything else okay?
That's a fantastic question. Yeah, because when we talk about keto and saying the keto diet, you start asking questions. Well, can I have this bar? Can I have that thing? Can I have this? No sugars, no grains to me is so much easier. And thankfully, back when I started, the keto thing was just getting traction. So I didn't even have those things in front of me. So I don't eat sugar. I don't eat sugar substitutes, and I don't eat anything that has a grain. And then also I stay off of seed oils as much as possible. Sometimes it's hard going into restaurants and that, but it's no sugars, no grains, no seed oils. So in the beginning, when I first started back in 2017, I was eating vegetables. I was cooking them in butter or bacon fat or this, but now I'm pretty much exclusively carnivore. I can tell you what I eat that's not meat, and that's avocado and tomato and sometimes berries.
So the reason I wanted to reach out was because I think we're very much on the same page, like whether we call it keto or carnivore, we're eating a no sugar, low carbohydrate and a much higher fat diet than normal, higher healthy fats. And when you're losing vast amounts of weight like that, like I did and like many people do on keto, you're in a state of ketosis, and whether it's carnivore diet or a keto diet, if you're losing weight, you are burning ketones and being in ketosis. So there's some so I felt there's a lot of similarities between our approach, and I think the results you've achieved are really inspiring to people, because if you look at Robyn's Twitter, you'll see before and after photos, and you're also like, it seems like you're doing an ultra marathon like every second. I don't know, from your Twitter feed. So you're clearly doing all these metabolic interventions that are really helpful. How does that quality of life, where you're saying you could resist stressors like moving your kids across the country, how does that compare to how life was before changing your diet? And how would that have been different for you before making this dietary change?
So before is the best way to say it is I was asleep. Once I finally had gotten my diagnosis, that's when all of the cocktails of medication started. I lived in an area in South Carolina that was kind of like a psychiatry dead zone, and I would have to drive for like an hour and a half to get to a psychiatrist. And it was hard. So then they wouldn't stay. So I was changing doctors. So I was always, every time I saw a new doctor, they were prescribing me something different. So I was constantly changing medications, and I was constantly just not right. Never, I would just never feel like even the medications were working. So I was tired. I was tired all the time. And when I wasn't tired, I was angry. So I remember very horrible experiences where I'm raising 2 young children and I'm just screaming at them, just screaming. Everything was just, there was never ever any in between. It was either very, very just subdued or anger. And then once they started going off to school and the medications were really just kind of taking over, they weren't really solving that issue, but they were, I was just in a stupor. I'd have to set an alarm to wake up in the morning to get them ready, to get them out to school. I would drive them to school, turn around, come back, go to sleep. I have an alarm set so that I would remember to wake up, to go get them from school or pick them up from the school bus, force my way through the evening activities, get them to bed, and then go right back to bed. Just because I was just so drugged. So it wasn't really helping my mental outlook or my attitude or how I felt. It was just keeping me in this stupor. So
how did you decide on no sugar, no grains as the diet you were going to switch to when you made this change?
That's because my husband listens to a podcast, and that's where he had heard of Vinny, and he actually had tried to do the diet. I was completely against it. I was like, no, I like pasta way too much. I'm not giving that up. So he had started doing it. He didn't succeed because I wasn't on board. And then, so that was really the only thing I knew about that could possibly help with cholesterol issues. So that's just what I flocked to. I didn't know any different at the time. So I guess I just kind of stumbled on it accidentally, and I'm thankful that I did.
And so for 4 years, how long did it take you to reduce? Because that must be a lot of medications to be that, from what you're describing. How long did it take you to titrate down off the medications? And was there a point where you felt like, I'm definitely much better now and I can cope in this state without medications? Was there a kind of turning point for you where you realized that coming off the medications was possible for you?
Well, certainly the turning point for thinking that it was possible was the move. And you got to consider, I lost 50 pounds, and because of the doctor issue that I was having in South Carolina, my general practitioner was just giving me the medications the last psychiatrist had said I should take, and we were just refilling. So I lost 50 pounds, and I was still on the same amount of medication that I was 50 pounds heavier. So I was just a lump. I would just be sitting on the couch. There was nothing. There was no activity going on. There was just nothing. So when I moved and I was able to kind of explain that to the new general practitioner that I went to, she was totally on board with it. But the biggest thing that I had to do was really formulate like a plan. I knew that I wanted to try this, and I was very open. I've been very open all along. Even when I got my diagnosis as being bipolar, I started writing a blog. I wanted to be able to tell people, I don't want you to follow the stigma. This could happen to anybody. And I'm trying to get the word out there. So my very first step was to tell my husband that I really wanted to try to do this. He's the one that's closest to me. He's the one that could see the signs if it started to rear its ugly head again. And so I told him, I told my children, they were the ones that took the brunt of everything that I was going through because I was with them all the time. I need you to give me honest feedback about how mommy is today. And trust me, that's not going to be easy for you, and it's not going to be easy for me, but we need to communicate. I'm going to go off of my medication, and everyone in this house is involved in this process. And I don't want you to ever feel like I'm attacking you. It could be my illness. I don't know. We're going into uncharted territory here. So and then I had to learn how to sleep. When I would take my antipsychotic, it would knock me out within 30 minutes. So I didn't know how to sleep. I was just always in just a drug haze. I'd basically pass out and then wake up later. So I had to come up with some ideas on how to teach myself how to sleep. And then when I worked with the doctor, we were just, we were halving it. We would just half it, and then maybe every other day. And I think it took a total of 4 months to get off and stay off of the medication. It was a long process. That stuff really just grabs hold. You feel really sick. You might feel really amped up, out of control. All of these things happen, and there's nothing you can do but just kind of hold on and wait for it to pass. But you know it's going to happen. You just gotta wait. So it was a long process, but it was a doable process.
I'm in the process of getting off lithium myself, and it's very slow. Tapering 150 milligrams every few weeks, making sure I have no symptoms, staying on the diet, being very careful, working with a psychiatrist. So yeah, for people at home, I mean, for me, it's been much better to just do this with a psychiatrist carefully and not rush into any medication changes. But you said you wrote down some notes about what things were like. I would love to hear about what things were like in the illness, your symptoms, how you got diagnosed, that whole story.
Okay, so it starts really, I'm going to say exactly 18 years ago, because my son is turning 18 on Wednesday. So I was diagnosed after he was born with postpartum depression. I would have these times where I would get so angry that I couldn't speak. And I was having full arguments with people, but I was writing them down. So I would write and the other person would speak, and then I would write and the other person would speak. And I realized that this had happened several times actually when I was in college. And even in high school, I was not a happy person. I did not want to be around. I was contemplating suicide in high school, very quiet about it, never told anyone. So by the time I have my child, then it starts to get uncontrollable, and my husband starts to notice it. And we're having these writing arguments, and he finally said, "Do you want to kill yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't want to be here anymore." And I had those notes like written everywhere. There's pieces of paper all over my house, and it says, "I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done." And I would have that just written everywhere. And I guess he finally found some of it, and so he takes me to the hospital because I've got an infant, and I'm not wanting to hurt him, but I'm wanting to hurt myself, and I'm helpless and hopeless, and I don't know what to do. He doesn't know what to do. So that's where I finally first kind of get a diagnosis that something's going on, and I was put on an antidepressant. Later, I have a second child, and I tried to not be on my medication while I'm pregnant with her because I don't know what that's going to do. And I ultimately go back to the doctor and say, I'm not winning this battle. I want to be as healthy as I can. I have a toddler. I'm pregnant. My husband travels for work. I need to be able to do something. So I'm on the antidepressant through her pregnancy, and I'm not exactly sure when that stops. We ended up moving again. And I think maybe when we moved, I stopped taking the antidepressant. So then I just start fighting. I'm fighting. The notes that I wrote down. I told you I was yelling at my kids all the time. I'm exhausted, and it's not just tired. I'm trying to be two different people. I'm trying to, on the outside, look like everything's okay, but on the inside, I am fighting this intense battle with myself and telling myself these things that are going on, and not telling anybody else about it. I'm two different people, and it's draining. plus running around after 2 children, and plus moving. We had moved, so I mean, just all of that. It was just hard, and then I could never hold down a job. Since my son's been born, I've worked in 3 different jobs. None of them were for longer than a year, and so I feel guilty because I've never contributed to my family financially. We made the decision for me to stay home when my son was born, before we realized I was sick. But I always expected to go back to work in some capacity, and I still haven't. I still don't have a job. So that has been hard, which caused us to be in some really dire financial issues. So, you talk about having the manias of bipolar. Even if I wanted to go and just like go on a shopping spree or go do, I had to reserve myself because I knew I would hurt the family if I was to do that. So I'm battling that, like my desire to go do something, but I can't because I have to be responsible for my family. So I mean, just constant, like just this constant push and pull, which would then make me even more and more and more and more depressed because I knew I wasn't contributing, because I couldn't do the things I wanted to do that I thought would make me feel better, even though it was not going to make me feel better. And where people oftentimes, I know that you've gone into music, where people oftentimes go into their art, or I would write a lot. Before I was on medicine, I would write a lot. I used to sing, but I couldn't dive into those things because of the responsibilities of the family. And then I just started, like, my mania turns into talking about myself, talking this like extreme self-doubt, this extreme just self-deprecating thoughts all the time, just constant all the time. And that's how life was. So, if somebody outside of my life, outside of me, would do something, then I would just get angry because I was already angry. I was constantly angry at myself.
So
what were those hypomanic episodes like for you?
That's what's hard to describe because, like I said, I had so many limitations. I mean, I guess thankfully I had limitations because I could have gone off and gone wild, but my limitations were my responsibilities. I always still had enough thought that I had to remain mom. I had to remain the center for my family. And I was trapped in that position. Like, I wanted to go off and run free, but I couldn't because I did have enough cognitive energy, I guess, to put towards knowing my responsibility and not being able to leave that.
It's something we keep pointing out in the podcast, is this, like you're describing, having kids but not having enough energy to engage them, and it's hard for anyone to imagine how that can be the case for people with bipolar. But even in situations like that, where you have like the most important thing in the world, it still doesn't change your biology. It's like if someone was to get the analogy I always give is, it's like, if someone was shot in the leg, it doesn't matter how much they love their family and want the best for them and want to do their job and want to do everything. You've been shot in the leg, and it's really difficult to do almost anything when you've been shot in the leg. And there's some like physical aspect to bipolar that has like that pain associated with it, and the exhaustion and the lack of energy. So it's like I always try and describe to someone that's like can't understand bipolar, it's like try and understand it as a physical condition, because if someone can't use their limbs or they're in a wheelchair, you can understand the limitations on their life and how they would need adaptations. But with bipolar, you get you get all of the kind of suffering of it, but none of the kind of adaptions and permissions that are given to people with a disability. So I can totally relate to what you're describing about not having enough energy to get through the day. And one of the things we're doing in our research is like looking at ketosis, which is not you wouldn't have to be on a ketogenic diet to achieve ketosis. You can just be eliminating sugar and eating higher fats. and many people in carnivore are going in and out of ketosis, and it gives more energy to the brain. Do you see bipolar like that? Do you feel like it's a lot to do with the energy in your body and your brain? Because it's always described as a mood disorder, but do you experience it differently to that?
No, I do. I agree. And I've had the great opportunity. I went to Low Carb Denver, so I had the great opportunity, actually twice now, to hear Dr. Palmer speak live, because I went to KetoCon last year and he spoke there. And you know what he's saying about, he's talking about this brain energy stuff, and I'm in the front room just crying because it resonates so well with me. It's like the light bulb turned on. It's like one day I started seeing color. Like I didn't know my world was so gray. And then one day it just, oh wow, it's colorful. I mean, I love being outside. I love just soaking in the sun. I just love that. So it's definitely, for me, it's definitely been energy. Like I have the energy to do things. When I was talking about the rules I set for myself when I was deciding to get off the medication, one of my biggest rules was no naps. You cannot take a nap, no naps. And I can think of twice I was traveling, and so my time zones were messed up. I've taken 2 naps in 4 years, just because, well, on purpose. Now I might be reading a book and snooze, but that's been important. And you know what? It hasn't been hard. Before, I couldn't even keep my eyes open. I was fighting this battle all the time, just exhausted. And now I have all kinds of energy. I want to go out and go do things. I don't know what to go do, but I have that desire, whereas I never had that desire before.
I always,
when you moved and you changed when you changed your diet, did you change anything else about your lifestyle as well?
Yeah, I'm very active now. So again, one of the other things that I started doing was I wanted to practice some mindfulness. So every morning, and now I wake up and I do yoga. I practice yoga. I almost never skip. And then as time progressed, whenever anybody does a dietary change like this, and that's what I was going to say about Dr. Palmer, is that he's also kind of trying to stay away from using the 4-letter word keto, and he's trying to say a dietary intervention. So whenever you do a low carb dietary intervention, you suddenly do have energy, whether you have a mental issue or not. So I've started, that's my rower right there. So I started rowing, and I walk, and I've started some strength training stuff. So those things have been really important to me as well. Because like I said, I don't work. So my world revolves around laundry and cleaning the house. Nobody really wants to do that. Like that's not my dream. So I've really jumped into being more physically active and building a stronger physique for myself, for overall health.
That's awesome.
Can you tell us about the Clubhouse that you do? You do a regular Clubhouse online talking about NSG diet.
Yes, so this is on Anna Vocino's Eat Happy Kitchen Clubhouse. We were doing it every single Wednesday. It has since slowed down. But what I have done is, because I'm an admin for the Vinnie Tortorich's No Sugars, No Grains Facebook group, I would find success stories and just go into Clubhouse, invite somebody on, and it'd be just like this. I would just let them have like 30 minutes to tell us their story and what they're doing. And then since it's Clubhouse, people can come in and talk and ask questions. So for about an hour, we do like a question and answer period. And we could dive into how people are using NSNG or low carb for them, and how that has helped change their lives. And it's so many different things. All of them, or almost all of them, have been recorded. So if you go into that Clubhouse, they're in there. There's also another group that uses that same Eat Happy Kitchen Clubhouse, and they do like a support group type thing once a week. And so those are all recorded as well. And I highly recommend the support group. So many people come from like say Weight Watchers or those types of things where there's a support group, and then they start just changing their diet on their own, and they don't have anybody to talk to, and they're used to that. So that's been a good outlet for a lot of people.
The Weight Watchers crowd must be having a bit of a wake up call. I did Weight Watchers leading up to my wedding, and they had oh gosh, it was like pasta, and you had to count the amount of treats so you put in it. It was the most unwell I've ever been, was doing that Weight Watchers type diet. I don't know what they do now, but it's
Ian, what did they have you eat?
oh gosh. Like I was trying to lose weight for my wedding, and they had me on high pasta, like low fat diet. It's my fault. I chose the low fat option because I didn't know any better at the time. And so I was weighing out little pieces of chorizo in my kitchen. I was actually living with a guy who was Jamaican at the time, and he was cooking these huge like barbecues with chicken with the skin on and everything. And I was like, man, what I would give to live that life. And I could have been, and I probably would have lost more weight if I'd done that. It was an absolute nightmare. But yeah, I if anything, I was like putting on weight and not and feeling the worst, like the most. It was definitely the most mentally unwell I've ever felt doing that like high carb, low fat approach. And I thought I was, being strict and was like trying, and I was going to the gym every single day, going in the rowing machine. It's just crazy. But so you can only imagine like what a revelation it was, like, going on low carb keto diet for the first time. It was quite remarkable. So
that's crazy that you thought you were doing the right thing for your health.
Yeah,
I was but how could you know? How could we have known better?
I know.
Everybody thinks they're doing the right thing for their health when they do those things. But that's what we're told. That's what the commercials all say. You're doing the right thing for your health, and you're doing exactly the wrong thing and have no idea that you are. It's sad.
No, it is so bizarre. And like, yeah, I was about 60 or 70 pounds heavier, and I was like, it's my wedding. Surely if there's any time I can lose, but no amount of willpower or discipline will go against that metabolic kind of pendulum that's going the wrong way. So right. It's it was really remarkable to you. So so you came off medications for 4 years, and did you notice that coming off when you're on the medications, many people put on weight when they go on antipsychotics and anticonvulsants? Was that something that you noticed? Because to me, this is such a obvious point about bipolar, that when you go on these medications, you can have tremendous weight gain in a short period of time. But we don't even think about that. It's like the medications we use to treat this thing are slowing your metabolism down and making you gain weight. But yet we don't think of bipolar as a metabolic disease. But the treatments are clearly that, it's obvious when I was speaking to someone the other day who has experienced this. They put on tremendous amounts of weight over 3 months, and then it comes off again when they go into mania and so forth. Did you experience this with antipsychotics and medication, the weight gain?
Oh, I definitely gained weight. I just don't know exactly if it was the medication or at the time I was not. I mean, like my diet at the time was cereal or Hot Pockets. I mean, I did not eat well. It was not pretty. Anything that I could do that was fast, because I wasn't awake long enough to cook. Even though I love to cook and I can cook, at the time I just didn't have the energy to do it. I could make one meal for dinner, but if I was going to eat throughout the day, it was cereal. Almost always cereal or Hot Pockets. That's what I lived off of. So, and then of course at the same time I'm taking this medication. So I'm sure it was just the perfect storm. But again, I said in the beginning, I was unaware. I was blissfully unaware that I was overweight, and I was pretty significantly overweight, and I just had no clue. That's what a drug stupor will do, I guess. I don't know, but I didn't know. I was not aware of it. Someone took a picture of me it was after I had my doctor's appointment and decided to change my diet, and before I actually had started changing my diet. So this picture, it was like within a 2-week span, and I saw that picture and I was like, whoa. That's what I look like. And I'm like yelling at my husband, you let me out of the house dressed like this. We were at a event, and I'm dressed like this in front of people. Like, why? And I actually still have the dress. And every year on my NSNG anniversary, I put the dress on, and it just hangs off of me now. So when I did finally get off the medication, obviously I had already lost 50 pounds. I started at 150, and like I said, weight was never. I usually don't even talk about my weight, but I started at 150 pounds. I lost 50 pounds, so it was 100 pounds. So I get off the medication and I continued to drop. I was in the 90s, and I was not happy there. So I did first, I was like, hey, I can eat whatever I want. So I started eating crazy stuff. Of course, you always pay attention to it when it's holiday time and there's holiday treats to snack on. So I like binge on holiday treats and I made myself sick. But this was more of like a physical, like I got neuropathy in my hands and in my feet. Actually, now that I've cleared out all the medications and stuff, we've been able to find out that I have Hashimoto's, which may have contributed to the bipolar symptoms that I was having. But my diagnosis was bipolar, so I still talk about it as such, and I was still medicated as such. But I don't know how much the thyroid stuff played into that at the time, because my diagnosis of the Hashimoto's didn't come until a year after I was off the meds for my bipolar, and I had gotten the weird neuropathy. So I knew that I could not go back to eating carbs to gain weight, because that was bad. That's when I started adding in strength training. I was like, well, if I'm going to gain weight, it's going to be muscle mass. And so that's where I focus. So I'm like about 110 right now, and that's perfect, right where I like to be. And I do that with strength training, because otherwise I don't know, I could be flabby and and really small and not happy with what I look like. And I was not happy with that at the time. So I do think that massive extra weight loss, like that 10 pounds below, was definitely from getting off those meds, and changed how often I wanted to eat or how much I eat.
Yeah, I want to ask about strength training, but
yeah.
So I was asking Dr. Palmer about this, and I said, Dr. Palmer, is it because people just get hungrier when they take these medications, or is it because the medications actually have a concrete effect on metabolism? And he said it's because they affect metabolism. So I could literally eat the same thing, and if I'm taking a bunch of Zyprexa, I would gain a bunch more weight. My question, though, is when you stopped eating all these foods that you loved, was it hard to stop eating them? Was it challenging?
It's hard to talk about when that first started. I was just so focused. Okay, yeah. And also, one of my diagnoses is OC. So I could get really like zoned in on something and just stay there. So I was just very focused on that. But as it has evolved, there was some time where it was more challenging than others. I started to realize, like, okay, even a little bit of carbohydrate, even though it's from whole vegetables, even that's leaving me with some weird symptoms. I need to cut those out. So it really wasn't the initial part that was hard. I mean, that's hard. I'd have a bowl of ice cream every single night, and then all of a sudden I have nothing. So that was hard. That's actually what started me getting outside and going for walks, because if not, I'd be wanting to stuff some food in my face. So I'd have to just redirect. So I would just go around the neighborhood for a little walk and wait for that to pass. I mean, you don't want to have to white knuckle through a dietary change, but there are some things that you just want, and you got to say no. You've got to be strong enough for yourself to not do those things. As I went through all of these changes, the number one thing in my mind was, I am healing and I am doing this for myself. And so anytime I would be like, I really want whatever, I'd be like, but it will make me sick. I don't want to deal with that part. I don't want to deal with that part. So I did actually have an opportunity to accidentally test my theory on my brain health, because I never really had thought about it. But Dr. Troclasian was my doctor for a while, and he's the one who figured out that I had Hashis. And also he figured out that I have I'm LMHR, so I'm a lean mass hyperresponder. And he was doing studies with Dave Feldman on his lean mass hyperresponder stuff. And part of his study was, so my cholesterol numbers were going up, even though I was low carb. And so his theory, Tro's theory, was, well, if you add a little bit of carbohydrate back, then technically those numbers should go down. So we tested this theory. I was totally on board. I so crave getting this word out there about this kind of stuff. Like, I'm willing to test on myself. So I started eating at the time before I started. I was completely carnivore. I wasn't even doing the avocado and tomato and stuff. I was completely carnivore. I had to add one sweet potato a day with no fat, just a sweet potato, a cooked sweet potato by itself with no fat a day. I did that for 3 months. We did the numbers. The numbers are going down. That's great. My husband starts saying, hey, you're not acting right. So I tell Tro this. He's like, okay, well then, like any other medication, we need to fit the dose to the person. So maybe one sweet potato is too much. Let's do half. So I cut it down to half a sweet potato every day. Start realizing things like, my first thought in the day when I wake up and I open my eyes is, I can't wait to go back to sleep. And I'm like, ooh, that's not good. I know where this is heading. So I tell him, and we drop down to a third. And my numbers were the blood work, the result that we wanted was happening. But it was affecting my mind. So we went down to a third, and I just couldn't kick it. And this ended in October last year. So October 22, I finally said, I can't do this anymore. I had given up my yoga. I had given up my exercise, my rowing. I had given up my strength training, and I was angry again. And, my husband's telling me, and I'm like, but I want to try this. And finally, it was just like, enough's enough. So it has taken me, I did not go back on medication. Perhaps I should have, I don't know. But it has taken me until probably, let's just say, it's April now. I probably started feeling kind of fully out of that by going back to my mostly carnivore NSNG lifestyle. I finally started feeling better in March. It took me that long to crawl back out of it. So I know for me, I have to keep my carbs down. So if it was an issue for me, if I saw something that I was like, boy, do I really want that brownie. And I bake for my children. So they don't eat like we eat. So I bake for my children, and I don't even lick my finger if I get it on my hand. I wash it because I know what that will do. I know how my body will respond to it. And so I just have to be strong for myself. And when you're out there on the boards, I'm on the message boards all the time. I've been called an NSNG zealot, and maybe I am, but it's because I have to think about how it affects me. And so, if somebody doesn't have this kind of mental disorder or any other particular illness that could get triggered by the diet, they can have those little things every once in a while. I feel like I could eat sugar, and even though I'm probably a sugar addict, I feel like my body could process the sugar. If I ate gluten, it would trigger so much. And if I went above maybe 20 grams, I don't track, but above maybe 20 grams of carbs in a day, I would start having those symptoms in my brain. And I just don't want that. That's not the life I want. I've lived that life. I don't need it anymore. The food's not going to make it any better. If I was unhappy and I wanted to dive into a bowl of ice cream, I'm just going to be even more unhappy. It's not going to solve the problem.
My friends call me a low carb zealot too, or they know how much I talk about this, and I assume they get annoyed at me or people. I try not to talk about it too much, but for me, like, I should be talking about it more. As the research progresses the next 5, 10, 20 years, like, this is going to be a tsunami of people doing this, and of information on wellness and the effects of low carb dieting, not just on mental health, but physical health, metabolic health, all these different diseases. So, personally, I try not to feel any guilt about it. I'm like, it's that important. I'm just going to talk about it as much as I want. I don't know, Ian, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's when you're describing like having 20 grams of carbs. I know it's so I have the same response. If I eat over 20 grams of carbs, I go back into usually depression. So I have to be extremely careful with not doing that. And it's almost like the motivation is so strong because it's like there's a pit of fire on the other side. You just don't want to jump in the pit of fire, and that's the kind of level of motivation I have towards it. But I think also there's people who do this like with epilepsy, and they are kind of metabolic. It's hard to understand at this stage exactly what it is, but some people who are younger, for example, like with Matt's experience, like you've gone on the diet very strictly, and then but you also like you seem to have had a much stronger, like almost like a cure in terms of like you can be more flexible. Not I mean, you're staying on ketogenic diet obviously, but you don't like if I drop out of ketosis for even like a day or something, I'll notice symptoms come back. But other people can really have like a thing where they do it for a period of time with epilepsy, and they have a substantial like healing of their metabolic system to some degree. And David Unwin has talked about this with type 2 diabetes patients, that especially if it's like a short time after diagnosis, they get put on a low carb diet, it seems to repair something very fundamental, and they can go into complete remission over a long time. But I feel like this indicates that there's a sort of it's such a rapid change with bipolar. People are used to talking about episodes. You have a depressive episode and you have a manic episode, and they might be months apart. But I think, and I've been publishing about this for quite a number of years, that I think it's a signaling system in the body that controls metabolism. And when you give it the right inputs, it turns on your brain energy in a way that's sustained and like a normal person. But when you give it the wrong inputs, it gets muddled and it starts to give you erratic brain energy. So you get periods of low energy and very high energy. And so yeah, in terms of talking about it, I feel like I just feel like I know what you're describing, Robyn, and what you've been through, Matt, with depression, especially because I'm bipolar 1, and it's just so debilitating. I don't want anyone to ever experience that. Like I just don't want any human being to ever have to, and I don't think they should. I feel like we can reach a point where that's not in the human spectrum anymore, and we can get rid of that. It feels like one of the worst states of suffering to me. So yeah, it's just remarkable though what you're saying, because to the modern way of looking at bipolar, this is like completely unheard of, that you would be able to come off all your medications and be well for 4 years with just using a dietary intervention. This is like outside the scope of anyone's realm of possibility. How do you conceptualize this? So you notice these really strong effects, like I do myself, with even small amounts of carbohydrates added back in. Do you have a kind of model for understanding it, or a way you've come to kind of see it? I view it as kind of brain glucose metabolism and ketones acting as an alternative fuel source. But how have you thought about it in terms of what mechanisms might be involved?
Oh, wow. I don't know that I have,
Yeah.
to be honest. I'm not a scientist.
If it works, it works. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
That's all you need to know. Yeah. Totally.
No, but I mean, you know, because I'm in the space, and because I have the opportunity to talk to people who are dealing across a lot of different, you know, they might have diabetes, or they might have a heart condition, and you can see everyone is healing. Everyone is healing in some capacity. And so even if I don't know what the mechanisms are, I do feel like I could scream from the mountaintops that this works. And they're all just individual experiments. Everyone is experimenting with this self. Everyone has taken it upon themselves, these people that we work with in the groups, to make a change, despite what the world is telling them is what it's supposed to be done. They've found their way, and they're putting their diabetes in remission. They're getting off all of their medications, you know, whatever it is. There's mechanisms involved here, and I'm very excited about those who can and know and will study this and get this out there, because we're living it every day. I wish, like I said, I was so thrilled to be able to help with Tro, even though it didn't quite work the way we wanted it to, because it messed up my head. But you know, I wish that I could have been studied while I was going through this. Didn't know that this was going to happen, so I obviously couldn't put myself out there. But now that we know these things are happening, there's people like me and both of you. We can get these studies out there, and I'm just so excited and thankful for it, that it's able to happen. And it's going to take some time, but I think the ball is rolling, and that I'm thrilled to death about that.
Oh, Robyn, there are a collection of people working in metabolic psychiatry, psychiatrists and researchers, Ian included, lots of other people, Dr. Sethi at Stanford, Dr. Palmer, who are just working on this incessantly. And when you have a treatment like this that works so effectively, maybe not necessarily for everyone, but certainly for a lot of people with bipolar disorder who start this and have a complete reversal of the symptoms. I mean, Ian and I talk to them all the time. There's going to be some momentum, and it's going to work. The other thing I was going to say is I have found that I've been getting a little bit pessimistic, like just living this modern lifestyle a little bit, where we're inundated with these carbohydrates and we're all staying up late with artificial light and sedentary lifestyles. And it's just not how humans are meant to live. That's not how we lived ancestrally. When we were cave people, we would get up with the sun, we would eat a lot of fat, a lot of protein, move a lot, walk a lot, run, hunt, whatever we were doing. How did the two of you feel about living in this modern world that doesn't adhere to that?
It's really hard. Why is it when I go to the hardware store, the checkout has candy bars? Like, that doesn't make sense. And I'm raising two children, and both of them have potentially what I went through locked into their genes somewhere, and they could unlock that. And I worry about that. So as much as I want, I don't, as a parent, I started this when they were old enough to balk at it. So I didn't want to I had my own battles to fight. Honestly, I didn't want to create another battle with them. Our relationship was never very good. I was the angry mom. They were scared to be around me. I wasn't going to do this to them. Now my husband and I both are MSNG, so they see how we eat and they see the benefits that it has had for us. But when I hear the two of them talk or see what they're around, teachers are giving candy out as, hey, you got an A, have a piece of candy. That is just like the worst thing. And that's just in the, that's just in the classroom. Let's not even dive into the fact that the school systems are required to serve the food that the food guides say that they have to serve. And I mean, just how awful that is. So, it's hard, very hard to live in the space. Both of my children are swimmers, and the day before a swim meet, they do a carb load, and we're supposed to provide stuff. So the very last swim meet of the year, we had everybody come to our house, and we made brisket, and they all ate the meat like crazy. And I'm like, you know what? Next year we're not doing carb loads anymore. We're doing meat. We're serving you guys meat. If you want a little tiny pasta on the side, that's fine. But the main course is going to be meat. And, that's why you can't be quiet, Matt. Like you said, like people get tired of hearing you, and they get tired of hearing me. And my children are definitely tired of hearing me. But you gotta speak up. You gotta say those things, because it does work. And if we're not saying it, who is? We can't rely on anyone else. I mean, we do have these scientists out there, these doctors out there. You're out there working, but there's a lot of negative voices that you have to be louder than. So we have to be the ones.
Yeah. And I think it can be more difficult, not necessarily impossible, but maybe more difficult to understand truly how impactful dietary change can be unless you've gone through it yourself, gone through the illness and made the change and seen the effects personally, or anecdotally in some other way, maybe as a psychiatrist or a clinician prescribed a dietary intervention and watched like a life-changing change in your patient. So I think for people who are very connected to what the dietary change can do, like my family members too as well, my mom, my dad. But then for a random person who hasn't experienced bipolar disorder and the horrific lows or the horrific highs or whatever you go through, it's maybe a little bit harder to understand just how incredibly life-changing the dietary intervention can be if done correctly.
Totally. And I think it speaks to what you're saying about like feeling like, oh, I wish I could do more to spread word about this. Like every time you're being disciplined and doing this, it's helping other people with bipolar, because when you're being well and showing that's possible, like every time we're on this podcast, speaking, people are learning like, oh, you can do this, like you can be disciplined and take control of your own health, and it's really, it's really powerful. Like, and the fact that, I just so grateful for what you guys do and being disciplined with this, because it is like a constant everyday thing you have to think about, and it's a lot of mental load to process this. But I almost see it as like we're in this battle to get other people better, and every time we're being disciplined, someone else is inspired and they can see that this works and it can help them. So I think you're doing a tremendous amount and you shouldn't feel in any way like guilty about not. You've only spawned an entire like metabolic psychiatry movement, but then also just like being just doing this and talking about it, I think is so impactful. And we get emails every week. It's pretty much every week now, people are emailing us saying, I listened to the show, I've tried this, it's really helping me. And many of them are like, I don't want to like put words in their mouth, but we'll have them on the podcast to describe their experience. But many of them are having really significant reduction of their symptoms. And we're capturing this in a questionnaire study that we're sending out to online forums and on social media. And we've had about 86 responses, and they're still coming in, of people with really detailed testimonies of doing this and exactly how they've changed their medications. And the results from that are really remarkable. It's like, it's no longer just like small groups of people, but now there's like a lot of people doing this, and we're going to publish this in the summer to bring this out into the open a lot more. So I'm just so grateful for both of you and like all the discipline and time and effort, and for sharing your story and being open about it. So thank you very much for all that you do.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that when I first got diagnosed, I was singing from the mountaintops, like, yay, I have a diagnosis. I have a name for what's going on. And now I'm going to be on medication and everything's going to be better. And I tried to do what I'm doing right now with that information, thinking it was the right thing. But I never had the energy because I was so under the influence of my medication that, like I said, I was blogging and that just stopped. Like it just stopped. Now I found a different intervention that's working so much better. And I desperately want to help get that information out there. And so I'm thankful for podcasts like this. I'm thankful for being able to tell my story, because people weren't studying it when I was going through it, and I happened to stumble upon it by accident. And so it's good that because people like me stumbled upon it, or you, Matt, we stumbled upon it, we were able to start these movements where we could do these questions, where we could do these studies. And that's wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for having the courage to tell your story on camera and on the internet. I mean, that's not easy. I know personally that's not easy.
No.
It's just amazing to talk to people. And every time it's the same story. I dropped the carbs, or I cut carbs out of my diet, and my life changed. My experience of life changed. I got my life back. I mean, I don't know if a lot of people know that having this illness, like, it can effectively take away your entire life. For me, it was 2 or 3 years of treatment centers, institutions, psych wards, being locked up, being on the run, being crazy, being manic, no chance at a job or school or graduation or friends or anything like that. I mean, I didn't have any, I couldn't have a life. And then when I did this diet, it all started to come back. So yeah, I mean, this is the power of what this can do. It can give people their lives back, and people who are maybe destined to do incredible things. Like, you look at some crazy bipolar kid, maybe don't think he has all this potential in him. But now when I see the people on the streets, the homeless people around here in California, and I see, and I'm like, maybe if that person had this earlier in his life, things could have turned out better. It's one and the same. If a coin had flipped the other way for me, that would be me out there. So it's crazy to me, but it's really heartening to hear all of the positive effects and the changes that this can have.
I know what you mean about relating to like homeless people as well, because it's just so apparent that like 80% of them that you meet have either bipolar disorder or like a lot of them have schizophrenia. And you're like, there's no difference between, like, if I wasn't getting support from my family and friends and knowing how to manage my health, like I would be exactly the same. There's just no difference. But like the way we treat homeless people is absolutely crazy, and they're just mental health patients, a lot of them, that haven't been given support. So sometimes when I see homeless people, I'm like, oh, you're just like the sign of the failing of our mental health care system, because we wouldn't have this if it was like if you were getting proper treatment and support. So one of the things I'm super committed to is like delivering keto and dietary intervention to people from all backgrounds and all classes. So I want to develop science that makes evidence that people will deliver this through like National Health Service in the UK, because I want it to be available to, you know, everyone, including homeless people, including one of the great things we have in the UK is this National Health Service, where they will give free treatment to anyone, including homeless people. So there's a homeless shelter down the road, and the people go there, and when they're pregnant, they get all the exact same care and support that my wife would get when she's pregnant, and that's really wonderful. And I really want that for mental health for people as well. And I know it's more complicated in America to get there with insurance companies and so forth, but I really think we can do it in the next 10 to 20 years, and that's what I'm super excited about. So thanks for raising that.
Good luck with that, Ian. That was a mighty challenge to get the government to.
It was a huge challenge, yes.
Is going to happen, and we're making it happen. And we're publishing our pilot data in the summer, and we've already through our pilot data seen a huge shift in our university for people coming around to this in a way that no one could have predicted 5 years ago. And so I just wanted to ask Robyn at the end of this, what's your vision for the future of spreading this message? Because your story is so powerful and so inspiring to people. And please follow Robyn's Twitter, because she has tons of really motivational pictures. If you're not exercising, you're definitely going to be exercising by the end of watching this. It's highly motivational. What would you like to see happen in the future for mental health treatment using dietary approaches, and what role would you like to play in this?
You know, I've said I've never been able to contribute financially to my family. So personally, I'd love, see, now I'm emotional. Personally, I'd love to be able to do that in some capacity. I've tried to think about what I would like to do, and I would just like to help. I just want to help people make this change, and you know, because like we've talked about, it's not always easy. You know, for me, I was able to really focus on those health benefits, but for other people, it's a wild road to walk, and it's hard to make the decisions. It's hard to stay on the path and to see the light at the end of the tunnel, especially when you're first starting out. So I'd like to be able to do that. I'd like to be able to help more individuals. I'm happy to share my story, and in hopes that helps. And I hope that more people can come out of the woodwork and talk. In fact, I just saw somebody on the boards today, and maybe I'm not sure she has a Twitter, but maybe I'll send you her information, because she's talking about her mental health journey. And you know, we do have to deal with stigma, and so many people are quiet that they're going through this stuff. So they might talk about everything else that's changed in their life, but never once talk about what's happening in their brain. And their brain is connected to the rest of their body. So that is a totally viable thing to talk about. And I don't know. I wish I had more to say, because I'd love to be able. I a lot of times feel like I could do more, and I don't know how. I was going to talk about that, like, because I did so much self-deprivating talk. I do feel like I'm at a very formative time when everybody else was learning how to work. I didn't learn that, so yep. I don't know how to get out there. So I do talk on Twitter. I do talk on Facebook, and you know, I'm happy to talk. I just don't know how to do that for myself. So I just wait for the invites to come.
So if people are listening that have a podcast, reach out to Robyn.
Absolutely.
We'll put your Twitter, and if you don't mind, your email, and please, there's tons of people watching this that have amazing podcasts and shows and all. So please reach out to Robyn. If you have blogs, post about it, follow her on Twitter. We'll put all social media links, and check out her Clubhouse, which we'll put a link to as well. Because I just think if you keep telling the story, you're going to have a huge impact. I really believe that. Just like Matt's done, just like everyone on this show has done by sharing. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.